Development should not create risks or further risks for our people and our economy, and we must ensure the resilience of our development investments. Although we tend to focus on the big disasters, of course, on Doi, Pepe, Ramil, the super typhoons of Frank in 2008, for which we have not fully recovered in the island of Panay, including my home province of Antique. All these disastrous floods and landslides. Typhoon Frank killed 98 people, Super Typhoon Durian in 2006 that caused volcanic mudflows that buried 8 villages, displaced thousands of families, killed hundreds of people in Albay. Ginsaugon 3-4 years ago in Leyte in 2006, which killed more than 1,000 people. The report also highlighted that it is also the smaller, little-known disasters, the ones that kill 10 people and destroy less than 10 homes, which we should be especially wary about. These smaller and localized disasters are on the rise, turbocharged by climate change. As a whole, they effectively diminish our capital, especially the poor, human, economic, social, and environmental capital, making us less resilient and unable to resist disasters and any crisis that a typical household may face, be it disease, loss of jobs, or livelihood. Second, rural livelihoods. Our livelihood vulnerability, approximately 75% of the people living below the international poverty line of $1.25 per day live and work in rural areas. Rural poverty is associated with unequal land distribution, a lack of access to improved seeds, irrigation technology and other inputs, the lack of economic diversification, weak markets, and trade barriers. Poor rural livelihoods dependent on rain-fed agriculture and on a single main harvest for annual food and income are highly vulnerable to weather fluctuations and hazards, which can lead to crop or livestock loss. Poor and indebted households have little or no surplus capacity to absorb these losses and to recover. The Philippines is, as you know, periodically affected by the El Niño Southern Oscillation, the ENSO phenomenon that induces prolonged wet and dry seasons. The most severe ones happened from 92 to 83, 1997 to 1998, and we all know that El Niño resulted to a GDP contraction and a dramatic drop in agricultural production, among many factors. From 1990 to 2003, the damage to this drought-related factors was estimated to be at $370 million. As a result of the massive loss in agricultural production in the 80s, several measures are being implemented to minimize its effects. And a key to this is an early warning and forecasting system, which allows government agencies to mobilize resources and farmers to plan ahead. Concerning ecosystems, the Millennium Ecosystem Report found that 60% of ecosystem services that nature provides to sustain human life, are declining, with some services like fisheries beyond repair. The GAR found out that in addition to this general decline, we're also creating trade-offs between ecosystem services. Mangroves have been destroyed to create shrimp ponds, increasing storm surge hazards. Wetlands have been drained, thereby increasing flood hazards, and deforestation has increased landslide hazards. We've seen how Ondoy and Pepe have brought not only excessive rainfall, but also mudslides, putik ang pumasok sa mga bahay sa malikinang kainta at hindi lang tubig ulan. Furthermore, vegetation regulates floods, erosion, and landslides. This regulation service is neither free nor unimportant, and we should value them equally with the provisioning services such as timber and agriculture. I note with deep concern the rapid deforestation in our land. Over the last century, the proportion of land area covered by forests in the Philippines has fallen from 22% in 1990 to just 19.4% in year 2000, but of course, our experts from the DNR will know this better. I will no longer talk and skip this portion about reforestation and deforestation. And as Undersecretary Paya said, he is not asking for a reforestation budget. Is that what I hear correctly? And therefore the 2 billion reforestation fund given by Congress for 2009 will not be replicated. Anyway, we will talk about that in your budget hearings. What I am trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have confirmed that weather-related hazards have altered significantly our lifestyles and our lives. Compared with the period before 1985, there has been a significant increase in the number of strong Category 4 and Category 5 cyclones, particularly in years with warm sea surface temperatures. This combustion or combination of decreasing hazard and decreasing resilience means that climate change not only magnifies disaster risk, but it also magnifies the highly uneven distribution of risk, skewing disaster impacts even further towards poor communities in developing countries. In the recent ADB report on the economics of climate change, I believe launched in June, it found out that if we are to do nothing, climate-related risks will increase by a 6% decline of Philippine GDP annually by 2100. The same study found out that our country would invest only 0.5% of our GDP by 2020 in 10 years to climate change adaptation. We can avert losses of up to 4% of our GDP by 2100. Clearly, a short-term investment with a long-term 8-fold gain. It is impossible to stop development, but we must adapt development to climate risks. And adaptation, therefore, also means underlying and understanding and adapting to these underlying risk drivers. The message of our times is clear. Our development approaches and practices in the past decades have allowed disaster risks to grow, to spread, to pervade until today. And the impacts of disaster have become both a cause and a consequence of poverty in developing countries. And given the urgency posed by climate change, decisive action needs to be taken now. Now is the time to revisit and to rethink conventional frameworks and strategies and actions for socio-economic development to further develop our society without compromising the welfare of our generation, to advance our socio-economic standards without putting the poor at greater risk, and to realize our goals on poverty reduction and sustainable development for the millennium with greater certainty of success. Now is the time to address the prevalence of poor urban governance, the continuing decline of our ecosystems, and the vulnerability of our rural livelihoods, the foremost drivers of disaster risks. Now is the time to make disaster risk reduction a primary strategy for sustainable and equitable social-economic development and to promote linkages and synergy between DRR and CCA. For reducing disaster risk reduces as well poverty. It safeguards development, helps us adapt to climate change with benefits for global security, stability, and sustainability. Now is the time to speed up the mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation into development policy formulation, planning, and decision-making, and the building of local government's capacity for this work. Now is the time for all of us to unite, regardless of politics, on all these issues. And I'm sure Governor Sally will be happy, the two Sallys will be happy with this. We must cross party lines to work on these issues on climate change and disaster reduction. It doesn't matter whether you are green or yellow or blue or pink. That is why I am white, because I am neutral. And I urge all of the partisan political parties to join together in fighting climate risks and to transcend territorial boundaries, political persuasions, and institutional affiliations. There is no more appropriate time to show political will, good governance, and exemplary leadership than now. Thank you for bearing with me.